The silent return. The stars had been quiet for 300 years, and Commander Elena Thane preferred it that way. She sat in the command chair of Monitoring Station Omega-7, watching the endless void through reinforced windows that stretched across the observation deck. The station floated at the edge of known space, where the hegemony's influence barely reached and where nothing interesting ever happened. Elena had served here for 15 years, watching empty space and filing reports that nobody read. The galactic hegemony had built these monitoring stations after the Great Silence, when an entire species had simply vanished from the galaxy without explanation. The humans of Earth had been there one day, trading and exploring, and gone the next. No distress signals, no final messages, no trace of their massive fleet. They had simply disappeared into the dark between stars. The official reports claimed equipment failure had destroyed their primitive ships, but Elena had read the classified files. She knew about the warnings the humans had sent before they vanished. She knew about their final transmission, broadcast across every hegemony frequency. We withdraw, but we do not forget. The galaxy will hear from us again when it is ready to listen. That had been 3 centuries ago, and the galaxy had moved on. The hegemony had grown stronger, conquering worlds and species with methodical efficiency. They ruled through fear and overwhelming force, and it worked. No one remembered the humans anymore, except as a footnote in ancient history books. The alarm shattered Elena's peaceful morning like glass against stone. Red lights flashed across the command center as her sensor officer, Lieutenant Kex, frantically worked at his station. The young Fraction's 4 arms moved in controlled panic as data streams flooded his screens. "Commander, I'm detecting massive gravitational disturbances in Sector 7, Kex reported, his voice tight with confusion. "The readings don't match anything in our databases." Elena moved to the sensor station, her boots clicking against the metal deck. The displays showed energy signatures unlike anything she had seen in decades of service. Massive objects were emerging from what humans had once called hyperspace, but the energy patterns were wrong. These ships weren't using standard faster-than-light drives. "How many contacts?" Elena asked, studying the incomprehensible data. "I can't get an accurate count," Kex replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The energy distortion is too severe. At least 20 signatures, possibly more." "Commander, these ships are enormous. Each one reads as large as a hegemony battlecruiser." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. No known species built ships that large except the hegemony itself, and these energy signatures were completely alien. She had seen hegemony vessels emerge from hyperspace thousands of times. This was something else entirely. "Send a standard greeting transmission," she ordered. "Let them know they've entered hegemony space and request identification." The communication officer, a nervous creature called Pip, worked at his station for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response, Commander. Either they can't hear us, or they're choosing not to answer." Elena studied the tactical display as more ships continued to emerge from dark space. The formation was too organized to be random, too precise to be anything but military. Someone was announcing their presence to the galaxy, and they wanted to be noticed. "Get me a direct channel to Hegemony Command," Elena ordered. "Priority Alpha classification." Within minutes, the face of Admiral Corex appeared on the main screen. The hegemony's chief military commander looked irritated at being disturbed, his reptilian features twisted in annoyance. Behind him, Elena could see the busy command center of the hegemony's flagship. "This better be important, Thane," Corex growled. "I have more significant matters to attend to than monitoring station reports." "Sir, we have 20+ unknown vessels of massive size emerging from hyperspace in Sector 7, Elena reported crisply. "They're not responding to communication attempts, and their technology doesn't match anything in our databases." Corex's expression changed from annoyance to interest. "Unknown vessels? Show me the sensor data." Elena transmitted the readings directly to the Admiral's station. She watched his face as he studied the information, seeing his confidence gradually replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "These energy signatures," Corex muttered, more to himself than to Alina. "They're similar to the old records from the human disappearance. But that's impossible. The humans were primitives with basic technology." Before Alina could respond, her communication officer interrupted with barely controlled panic in his voice. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. It's on all frequencies simultaneously." "Put it through," Alina ordered. The main screen flickered and changed to show a human face. Alina had seen pictures of humans in old historical files, but this was her first time seeing one alive. The man appeared middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and calm blue eyes that seemed to look directly through the screen. He wore a uniform Alina didn't recognize, dark blue with silver insignia. "This is Admiral Marcus Stone of the Earth Stellar Defense Force," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "We are returning to galactic space after a 300-year absence. We come seeking dialogue, but we will not be ignored or dismissed as we were before." Alina heard Admiral Corex's sharp intake of breath through the communication link. The hegemony commander was staring at the screen as if he had seen a ghost. "That's impossible," Corex whispered. "The humans are extinct. They disappeared centuries ago." Admiral Stone seemed to hear the comment, though Alina wasn't sure how. The human's expression remained calm, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "We did not disappear, Admiral Corex," Stone said, somehow knowing exactly who was listening. "We withdrew. We needed time to prepare for our return, time to ensure that when we came back, the galaxy would be ready to listen." Alina watched in fascination as the human admiral continued speaking. There was something unsettling about his confidence, the way he spoke as if he held all the advantages in this situation. A single species shouldn't be able to project such authority when facing the entire hegemony. 300 years ago, we offered friendship and cooperation to the galaxy," Stone continued. "We were met with arrogance, dismissal, and eventually threats. The hegemony demanded our submission and threatened our worlds when we refused. So we left, but we promised to return when the time was right." Admiral Corex found his voice, though it carried none of its usual authority. "Your ships were destroyed in hyperspace accidents. Your entire species was wiped out by your own primitive technology." Stone smiled, and Alina felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Admiral, your intelligence is as flawed as your memory. We have been watching the galaxy for 3 centuries, studying, learning, and preparing. We have seen the hegemony's expansion, its methods, and its treatment of other species. We have decided that changes are necessary." "Changes?" Corex's voice was rising with anger. "You dare speak of changes? You are one species facing the might of the entire galactic hegemony. We command thousands of worlds and millions of ships. And yet," Stone replied calmly, "you seem concerned about 21 of ours." Alina realized with a start that the human had given them an exact count of his ships, something their own sensors couldn't determine. How had he known what readings they were getting? Before anyone could respond, Stone continued, "We will demonstrate our intentions with actions rather than words. Admiral Corex, you have a patrol fleet approximately 4 light hours from here. The IHS Dominator and 7 escort vessels. Please observe." Alina's blood froze. The IHS Dominator was indeed a hegemony patrol fleet, but it was operating under strict communication silence for security reasons. There was no way the humans should have known about it, let alone known its exact composition and location. "How did you?" Corex began, but his question was cut off by urgent reports from his own crew. "Sir," Alina heard a voice in the background of Corex's transmission, "we've lost contact with the Dominator Patrol. All 8 ships have gone dark simultaneously." Stone's image remained perfectly calm on the screen. "They are unharmed, Admiral. Their weapons and engines have been disabled, but their life support and basic systems remain functional. This was a demonstration of capability, not an act of war." Elena stared at the sensor displays, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. The Dominator was a heavy battlecruiser with 7 destroyer-class escorts. For all 8 ships to be disabled simultaneously would require either a massive fleet engagement or technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Impossible, Corex breathed. Our ships are equipped with the most advanced shields and defensive systems in the galaxy. We're equipped, Stone corrected gently. Your technology hasn't advanced significantly in 300 years, Admiral. Ours has. Elena watched Admiral Corex's face cycle through confusion, anger, and what looked like the first stirrings of fear. The hegemony had ruled through technological superiority for millennia. The idea that another species might have surpassed them was literally unthinkable. What do you want? Corex finally asked, his voice barely steady. Stone's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained hard. We want what we have always wanted, Admiral. Respect. Recognition. A seat at the table when decisions are made that affect all species in the galaxy. We do not seek conquest or domination. We seek partnership based on mutual respect rather than fear. And if we refuse? Stone was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could see him weighing his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. Then we will take what we need to protect ourselves and those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy has had 300 years to learn the value of cooperation. If that lesson must be taught through demonstration, then so be it. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. Around her, the monitoring station's crew worked in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Admiral Corex's image flickered back to life, but the confident hegemony commander was gone. In his place was an old soldier who had just realized that everything he thought he knew about galactic power might be wrong. Thane, he said quietly, maintain observation and report everything. I need to contact the High Council immediately. As Corex's transmission ended, Elena turned back to her sensor displays. The human ships were still there, holding position in perfect formation. 21 vessels that had somehow appeared from nowhere and demonstrated the ability to disable hegemony warships without firing a shot. Lieutenant Kex looked up from his station, his 4 eyes wide with confusion. Commander, what do we do now? Elena studied the mysterious ships on her screen, thinking about 300 years of galactic history and wondering how much of it had been built on false assumptions. We watch, she said quietly. We watch and we wait to see if the galaxy is ready to listen this time. But deep in her heart, Elena suspected that, ready or not, everything was about to change. The humans had returned, and they were not the primitive species that had vanished 3 centuries ago. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And they were no longer asking for permission. The reckoning unleashed. The Hegemony High Council had not convened an emergency session for over 2 centuries. The vast chamber beneath the capital city of Dominion Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to address a threat none of them truly understood. Overlord Vexstar stood at the center of the circular chamber, his massive form commanding attention from the hundreds of species that made up the hegemony's ruling body. As the supreme leader of the galactic government, he had seen countless threats rise and fall. Pirates, rebels, rogue AI systems, hostile aliens from beyond the rim. All had been crushed beneath the hegemony's overwhelming military might. But this was different. This was impossible. The human ships had been sighted in 17 different systems, Admiral Corex reported, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled anxiety. They appear without warning, observe our installations, then vanish again. Our ships cannot track them, cannot predict their movements, and cannot engage them effectively. Counselor Zeph, a crystalline being whose species had been among the first to join the hegemony, spoke in harmonics that translated to concern. How many ships are we facing, Admiral? Unknown, Corex admitted, the words bitter in his mouth. Our estimates range from 50 to 500 vessels. Their stealth technology is beyond our ability to penetrate. Overlord Vextar felt the weight of 300 years of history pressing down on him. He had been young when the humans first appeared in galactic space, full of curiosity and strange ideas about cooperation and mutual respect. The hegemony had been smaller then, less confident in its dominance. The humans had been ignored initially, dismissed as another primitive species that would either submit to hegemony rule or be conquered in due time. But the humans had proven troublesome. They refused to acknowledge hegemony authority over their worlds. They formed alliances with other independent species. Worst of all, they asked questions. They challenged the natural order, the divine right of the strong to rule the weak. They had to be dealt with. The official records stated that human ships had suffered catastrophic failures during hyperspace jumps, wiping out their entire spacefaring civilization. The truth was more complex. The hegemony had issued ultimatums, made threats, and prepared for war. The humans had listened politely, then vanished overnight. Every ship, every station, every trace of their presence in galactic space had simply disappeared. "Sir," interrupted a young communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's being broadcast simultaneously to every hegemony facility in the galaxy." Vextar felt his secondary hearts skip a beat. "Display it." The holographic projector in the center of the chamber activated, showing the same human admiral that had appeared at monitoring station Omega-7. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood other humans in the same dark blue uniforms, and through the viewports of what was obviously a massive ship's bridge, the stars moved in patterns that suggested impossible speed. "Members of the galactic hegemony," Admiral Stone began, "I am speaking to you from the bridge of the EDS Indomitable, flagship of humanity's return to galactic space. We have spent 300 years preparing for this moment, studying your civilization, learning your strengths and weaknesses, and developing the tools necessary to ensure that this time you will listen." Vextar leaned forward, his massive claws gripping the edge of his podium. "What do you want, human?" Stone's image turned slightly, as if he could see directly into the council chamber. "What we have always wanted, Overlord Vextar. Recognition that the galaxy belongs to all species, not just those with the largest fleets. An end to the hegemony's policy of conquest and subjugation. A voice for the countless worlds that live in fear of your next expansion." "Impossible," Vextar growled. "The hegemony maintains order in the galaxy. Without our guidance, chaos would consume everything. Your order," Stone replied calmly, "is built on fear and oppression. We have watched for 3 centuries as you conquered peaceful worlds, enslaved entire species, and eliminated anyone who dared to question your authority. This is not order. This is tyranny." Admiral Korex stepped forward, his voice filled with military authority. "You speak boldly for a species facing the combined might of 10,000 worlds. How many ships do you have, Admiral? 100? 1,000? We can field millions." Stone smiled, and every being in the council chamber felt a chill of unease. "Admiral Korex, you still don't understand. This isn't about numbers. This isn't about who has the biggest fleet or the most powerful weapons. This is about capability. And we have spent 3 centuries developing capabilities you cannot imagine." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed as urgent messages flooded the communication systems. "Sir," the communications officer called out, his voice cracking with panic, "we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Our main fleet bases, orbital shipyards, and command centers are all reporting the same thing. Human ships have appeared in their systems. Hundreds of them." Vextar felt the floor seem to shift beneath his feet. "Hundreds? That's impossible. Our deep space sensors would have detected any fleet that large." Stone's image continued to watch them with that unsettling calm. "Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect, Overlord. We have learned much about stealth, about misdirection, and about the art of appearing exactly where we need to be at precisely the right moment. On screens around the chamber, reports continued to flood in. The massive Hegemony Fleet base at Syrian Prime reported 20 human dreadnoughts had materialized in their system. The shipyards of Kellen VII were surrounded by vessels that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Every major Hegemony installation was reporting the same impossible occurrence. "What do you want?" Vextar repeated, his voice no longer carrying its usual authority. "We want you to listen," Stone replied. "For 300 years, you have ruled through fear. Today, we demonstrate that your weapons, your fleets, and your threats have no power over those who refuse to be intimidated." As if on cue, more reports began streaming in. But these were different. Instead of invasion or destruction, the human ships were doing something unprecedented. They were helping. "Sir," the communications officer said, his voice filled with confusion. "The humans at Kepler Station are assisting with emergency repairs to their life support systems. The Hegemony base at Rigel reports that human ships have driven off the pirate fleet that was attacking them. The colony at New Damascus says human engineers are helping them stabilize their failing power grid." Vextar stared at the reports, unable to process what he was reading. "They're helping our installations." Stone nodded. "We are demonstrating our capabilities, Overlord. We could have destroyed every major Hegemony facility in the galaxy within the first hour of our return. Instead, we choose to save lives, prevent disasters, and show protection to those who need it. This is what strength should be used for." The chamber erupted in confused voices as council members tried to understand what was happening. Some called for immediate military action, others demanded explanations, and a few whispered questions about whether their entire understanding of galactic power had been wrong. Admiral Corex was frantically coordinating with his fleet commanders, trying to organize a response to an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "Our forces can engage them," he announced. "I can mobilize the entire Hegemony Navy." "To what end?" Stone asked. "Admiral, your most advanced battleship is based on technology that is 300 years old by our standards. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Your ships cannot match our speed. Your tactics are predictable because we have been studying them for centuries." To prove his point, Stone gestured to someone off-screen. Immediately, every communication system in the council chamber came alive with reports from Hegemony fleet commanders. "This is Battle Group 7, came one voice. "All our weapons systems have been disabled by some kind of energy field. We cannot fire." Battle Group 12 reporting. "Our navigation systems are completely offline. We cannot move from our current position." Battle Group 3. "Something is interfering with our communications. We can hear incoming transmissions but cannot send responses." One by one, every major Hegemony fleet reported the same thing. Their ships were intact, their crews were unharmed, but their ability to wage war had been completely neutralized. "How?" Admiral Corex whispered. 300 years of development." Stone replied. "While you grew complacent with your dominance, we pushed the boundaries of every science, every technology, every capability. We learned to manipulate gravity, to phase matter between dimensions, to disrupt electronic systems at the quantum level. We developed weapons that can disable without destroying, shields that can protect without isolating, and ships that can travel in ways you never imagined." Dr. Sarah Chen stepped forward on the human bridge, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to speaking to diverse audiences. "We're not here to conquer or replace you. We're here to offer something the galaxy has never seen, partnership based on mutual respect rather than fear." Vextar looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species representatives. For the first time in his long life, he saw fear in their eyes. Not fear of conquest or destruction, but fear of change. Fear of losing the familiar system of power that had defined galactic politics for millennia. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. Stone's expression softened slightly. Dissolution of the hegemony's military conquest protocols. Recognition of the sovereignty of all spacefaring species. Establishment of a truly representative galactic council where decisions are made through cooperation rather than force. And protection for those species and worlds that cannot protect themselves. And if we refuse? Stone was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. Then we will implement these changes ourselves. The galaxy has lived under the rule of fear for too long. It's time for something better. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans weren't just demonstrating superior technology. They were offering a choice: voluntary cooperation or involuntary change. Counselor Zeph's harmonic voice broke the silence. You speak of protection for the weak. What of the strong? What happens to those who have built their power through strength? Dr. Chen answered this time. Strength is not diminished by being used to protect rather than to conquer. True strength comes from lifting others up, not from keeping them down. The galaxy has room for all species to thrive if we work together instead of competing for dominance. Over the next hour, reports continued to arrive. Human ships were appearing throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors but as protectors. They stopped conflicts, prevented disasters, and demonstrated capabilities that made hegemony military power look primitive by comparison. But most importantly, they were showing restraint. Despite having the power to crush the hegemony completely, they chose instead to disable, protect, and preserve. Finally, Vextar stood and addressed the chamber. The age of the hegemony as a military power is over. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that make our fleets obsolete, but they offer us something unprecedented: the chance to transition from rulers to partners, from conquerors to cooperators. The vote was close, but it passed. The galactic hegemony would dissolve its military conquest protocols and join a new confederation based on cooperation rather than fear. As the council session ended, Admiral Stone's image smiled for the first time since his return. "Welcome to a new age," he said. "Welcome to a galaxy where strength serves protection, where diversity is celebrated, and where the stars belong to all who reach for them." Above the capital world, the human fleet remained in position, no longer hidden but clearly visible as guardians of a new order. They had returned not as conquerors, but as teachers. The galaxy would never be the same again, and for the first time in centuries, that was a good thing. The age of fear was over. The age of cooperation had begun.